The nonfiction space is so interesting. It can be so tactical from a business side, but it can be so emotional from a trauma space.
Mhm.
And that individualized approach is so important for people to feel comfortable, for people to feel safe, for people to feel vulnerable. I took a lot of what I knew from working with clients, over the course of 15 years of how to help them get their story out. When I started attending masterminds a couple of years ago, my expectations were all the way too high and failing to, really apply all of the knowledge that I was, taking away. So I've learned over the last year and a half, or taught myself, to go in with the expectation of one major takeaway and at least one solid relationship. Because I believe that relationships are, the lifeline of all of our businesses and
Mhm.
actually just life in general. The mastermind I was at was Selena Sue, and the topic was actually rich relationships, which really tied well into my expectations. So I came away with some amazing new contacts. We celebrated Laura Belgray's new book launch, which was also amazing. But the biggest thing for me was really being able to identify a little bit better who my coaching clients are. I know we're going to talk a little bit later about the process, but my process has always been offering consult calls because I need people to be comfortable with me and I need to be comfortable with them because, like you said, sometimes we do cross some ethical places or places that I know I'm just not a good fit for somebody or somebody isn't a great fit for me. So really helping to dial in that process is really helpful, especially when you're, sitting in a room of a dozen really brilliant minds, all in their own respective industries. So that would definitely be my biggest takeaway is just really refining that process instead of flying by the seat of my pants sometimes.
Right. Could you actually distill it down into a difference in variables versus the niche that you were appealing to prior to the mastermind versus how that niche might now be more narrowed down, more specified? Did you identify a tangible difference between these 2 points?
Absolutely. And it's also, I should mention, that's been a year-long process for me. I just
Sure.
finished my 15th book. And when I first started, when I first
Wait, wait a minute. She's
started
a writer. No, that totally tracks.
when I finished that one and I started looking at a trend of the books that I really enjoyed the most, I had amazing clients for all 15 of them. I should note that. But I started noticing a trend that just I felt a lot more passionate about. And, with about my background is in social work, I spent 15 years there. So I really started tying more into stories versus the tactical tangible side of books. So really just really refining where are those people, because I've been really fortunate to be in a number of publications, but publications that are typically read by other entrepreneurs, which doesn't mean I don't want to write for entrepreneurs. So
Sure.
the bulk of my client base are entrepreneurs. So, but just helping really refine where are those people hanging out outside of, your typical entrepreneur, Business Insider, Forbes, that sort of area. So that was really a process that's been happening really since the beginning of the year, but then really, being able to use these masterminds too as great market research for the lack of a
Mhm.
fan. What's interesting about this particular mastermind that I attended is that Selena's really good about curating rooms of people that can really, that she sees merit in. We can offer value to each other some way, shape, or form, and some more than others. So we actually have access to the contact list of people who are attending beforehand, which I've really loved that piece. And even though I know it's sort of eliminating the organic side, we're really able to start being intentional with who are the people that we want to speak with. Because especially in a 2 day space, as you're really kind of cramming a ton of information and learning and teaching into a short 2 days
Mhm.
or sometimes a long 2 days, but in this case, a short 2 days. So I really loved that aspect. So even though it is sort of one remove from the organic piece, it does allow you to set those expectations that you're talking about and just being really intentional with your time there, especially in a city like New York City where there's a million other things happening. You don't necessarily have, I always say sometimes the best conversations at masterminds are the ones that happen outside of the mastermind,
Mhm.
whether it be at a dinner or you've met up with someone the next day or in that sense. So I think it's just really a matter of if you have access to the people who are going, and I think it's also okay to ask. I don't think that that's, the worst thing someone's going to do is say no,
Sure.
or, doing a little bit of research of who typically attends this person's mastermind, because I think that you can set an intentionality with that maximize the use of your time, because taking 2 days out of our business, 3 days, 4 days can be a lot. And we really need to be mindful of that. And that's just really how I've sort of navigated that. Having said that, there were people I didn't think I was really going to connect with. And all of a sudden, that true organic piece happens, and you think, you know, you're amazing and we really need to connect outside of here. And I think it's also important to note that although we leave these masterminds, what we think are great connections or new relationships for our business or what have you, is that they require nurturing thereafter. Like the work there doesn't stop. It's not just, oh yeah, you're a great person I want to collab with, and then you never speak to them again. So it's really that follow through. Otherwise, you're just, heading into a room, you may as well be handing out a business card and leaving again. We've all
Yeah.
been through those types of events. So I think with masterminds, it's just really being intentional with those relationships. Population that I worked with were youth who were anywhere between 12 and 21, which I know seems like a really wide range, and it is, who were involved in gang violence, human trafficking, prostitution. And we always refer to them, unfortunately, as the population that no one else wanted to work with. And that was the population that I was just super drawn to. And these were youth that had been through system after system that felt failed, either by families or school systems or court systems or life in general. So I found more than anything, and I was still in my early 20s when I started, was that a lot of them just needed an advocate. And even though they had a voice, they weren't being heard. So that's where a lot of not so much the storytelling side of it, but really being able to take what their needs were and make sure that someone was listening. And a lot of times people listened a little bit more when you had an advocate in the social workspace, for example. So that was a big thing for me initially. But to be totally transparent, no one's in social work for money. So, we often found ourselves with different part-time jobs, whether it be still in the same field or what have you. And I always loved writing. I was published in Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul years and years and years ago. So I always really loved it, whether it was cathartic for me through journaling or, I started becoming that person at work about, could you finesse this for me? Could you check my report for me? And I started realizing, this might actually be a side gig that I could take on. And that's really how that unfolded. But again, from the place of really helping people to use their voice in some capacity, whether it's entrepreneurs, sharing their voice for sales or conversions, or whether it's, everyday people like you and I who have a story to share that, want to inspire some way. That I think inspire is one of those words that just becomes sort of inundated and saying it all the time. But the truth is, we've really been able to watch social change happen, and whether it be from a policy level or from a community level. And I believe that that's where I'm still so rooted in the social work space. And I think that's really what sets apart where I'm coming from. I know that was a long-winded way of answering your storytelling question. So it was in a way sharing their stories, but again, with intentionality of we need a change to happen, whether it be getting back into school, whether it be getting into work programs, whether it be being able to go back home. There's so many facets, obviously, to that. But yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. People come to you with stories of trauma, and most of the people that come to me have some type of trauma that they want to share for whatever reason. That's 100% where my social work background parallels so well, which I had no idea when I kind of had a general idea, but I had no idea how much that would really help. And, people really understand that I'm coming from a place of empathy. I'm not coming from a place of sympathy, because we can be objective and we can really make a change. So I find with the new, book coaching clients I work with, or my ghostwriting clients, that, really dialing in to where I can serve them best with that professional experience has really helped just create a really great balance where people feel heard. But the last thing someone wants to hear when they're sharing a story of trauma with you is like, oh my gosh, that's so awful. I'm so sad. And not that those things aren't awful or sad. They're looking for someone who's going to lift them up and help them use this story for good, or, our cliches with, turning their mess into messages. But that's really where my goal is. And I think I know that I come at it from an objective place, and sympathy is not gonna get these stories the justice that they need to create some type of impact. Client confidentiality is the utmost important for me. Before I even share anything on a consult call with them, they have access to an NDA, a blanket one, just that I want people to feel comfortable that I'm not going to hang up this call with them, or I'm not going to do all this work with them, and that I'm going to go share it somewhere else. Because my driving force is their story to be heard for impact and really has nothing to do with me on a credit basis. So again, a long-winded answer to your question, but I felt really conditioned coming from a social service industry into ghostwriting because credit or having my name in lights or what have you was never in the plan. Most of the clients that fall into that space are entrepreneurs. So we've been really fortunate that they have a lot of content that we can consume already because the bulk of the work, or at least 40% of the work, goes into the research of who that person is. If I have clients speaking at conferences, I try to attend just because then we get a better idea of their voice inflection, how they say things, how they do things. We do a lot of correspondence through voice notes. I encourage them to do that because, we can say the same thing 10 different ways and it'll have 10 different emotions. Or, there's certain things that a lot of people say. I have a horrible habit of saying, after I say things, and something I'm trying to become more and more aware of. But the reality is, as humans, we all have those little things. So it's important that's conveyed in their writing. And the only way to really know that is with them speaking to you from an unedited lens. Because, through emails and things like that, they can really edit. That didn't sound right. You typically wouldn't add, at the end of things. So a lot of it is done through voice memo, even if it's, depending on what we're talking about articles and blog posts, for example, is that sometimes their best ideas or things that they want to have included are when they are driving or when they are out on a walk or at the gym or whatever the case is that, I really encourage them, pick up your phone because we always have our phone somewhere, do a little voice memo and shoot it over to me. We can transcribe it and go from there. So that's really the books look a little bit different. There's a lot more check-in calls, especially with coaching clients who are writing their own book. I always work from a live document with those clients so that they have an opportunity to see where have we added things, where have we taken things out, where are we making suggestions, where are we cleaning up their story, where do we need more. So I find, and I only really started working from a live document a few years ago. Initially, that really, I don't know, made me nervous. It felt like I had someone looking over my shoulder, but I really found that we've been able to do people's stories, articles, blogs, emails, a lot more justice when they have a document that they can see that we're working from. Every single person has a story of some sort. And there was a quote, and I wish I could attribute to who it was. I have no idea who said it, but it was, your story could unlock someone else's prison. And that's always really, really stuck with me because we just never know what we share, who we share it with, when we share it, or why we share it. Case study, I know. I was hoping I could give you a little bit more, but I hope that speaks to at least the social change and peace that we like to work in. And we've had other clients open up survivor parks. Can't give locations, but parks that, were parkettes and communities that allowed other people who were survivors of XYZ, that they could go and enjoy that. And yeah, it's interesting the different places that it happens. I would like to say I think that AI is a great tool for writing. I don't think it's the answer, especially since that technology, as sophisticated as it is, cannot share someone's story. Because people often ask me, are you scared? And I said, absolutely not, because my main role is using someone's voice. It's not necessarily the words on the page. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of both. However, I think AI is a great tool for people to use, but I don't think it's the answer for everything. I think it's great for prompts. I think it's great to get your mind going. There's certain instances that we'll use it in some of, descriptive work that we're doing, whether it be through Pinterest is an area that I like to play a lot in. We'll use, the AI technology there with our own edits, because I think that's where things got a little bit tricky in communities that I hang out with online, if you will. And, we were seeing people really excited. I wrote a book in one day, and it's like, no, actually, you didn't. Starbucks inside of stores is probably my most common go-to, because bookstores are often my answer to writer's block. So it kind of is the best of both worlds for me. And that's really why a couple of years ago, I really committed to attending at least 3 or 4 masterminds a year. It's just getting around other people that, think differently than you, think differently than you. And so important because, isolation can be a really detrimental place, not just to you as your business, but you as a person. So yeah, definitely being in those rooms.
I appreciate that.
If I can convey anything as my sort of last thoughts, is that please share your story. Use your voice for impact, whether it be for someone else or a bigger cause or micro, macro, it all matters. So that's just really what I'd encourage people to do. My name is pretty much any social platform you can think of, LinkedIn included. And then my website, of course, is katherinenickel.com. Katherine with a C, Atherine, and then Nikkel.